Parshas Vayeira describes the events leading to the destruction of Sodom and the destruction itself, among other things. The Torah in Perek Yud Tes, that is chapter 19, says that two of the malachim, of the angels that had visited Avraham and Sarah, arrived at Sodom in the evening. And Lot was out, and he saw them, their visitors. He invited them to sleep in his home. And they initially resisted. And eventually he brought them in, gave them something to eat. And before they were about to retire for the evening, a bunch of people came. Men of the city came, and they surrounded the house. And they called out to Lot, and they said, "Where are these people who came to you? Bring them out so we will know them." That's an allusion to violence, to sexual violence, according to Rashi, against these people. And Lot knew that they were up to no good, so he stepped out of the house to speak to these people, and he shut the door behind him. He was trying to protect his guests. And he says the following. This is in verse 7, Pasuk Zayin, Vayomar. Al na achai toreu. Please don't, my brothers, do evil. It's an interesting turn of the phrase. My brothers. What exactly is Lot doing when he says, my brothers? So Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetsky says, we see in many places that people refer to people, others who they know, as my brothers. An ach can mean literally biological brother, meaning descendants of the same parents, or one parent or the other. It can mean karovim. It can mean relatives. We see that in Parshas Vayeira, where the Torah is talking about Lavan, who chases after Yaakov, and it says Vayikach es Echav imo. He took his brothers. You might call them comrades. And Rashi refers to them as karovav. He says that they're Echav, his brothers, means the people who he's close with. Sometimes an ach means a partner. Sometimes an ach means somebody who is equal in strength or in power. So what is the meaning of ach here? So Rabbi Yaakov says that usually when it's not a reference to a biological relationship, it's at least talking about some level of familiarity. So he points to Parshas Vayeira, which we already referred to, which talks about Lavan, took his Echav. There's another usage of the word, and this is where Yaakov arrives at Haran after having been in Beis El, and he meets up with a bunch of shepherds and a bunch of flocks. And he says as follows, and they're dealing with the well of water. And Yaakov says to them, Vayomer lehem Yaakov, Achai, me'ayin atem, vayomru mecharon anachnu. He says, my brothers, where are you from? And they say, we're from Haran. Now, he obviously doesn't know them. They are not his makirim. They're not people with whom he is familiar. Why is he calling them Achai, my brothers? And the Torah continues, and Rashi explains that when Yaakov tells them, once he establishes who they are, and they know Lavan, and how is he, etc., and Yaakov says, Hein od hayom gadol lo eis seif amikneh hashkuat son uluchu. Says it's still the day is still large, meaning it's still light outside. It's not time to collect the flocks yet. The implication here is that they're falling asleep at the wheel. They're being lazy on the job. It's not appropriate, he's saying to them in a gentle way. It's not appropriate for you to be gathering and schmoozing. You should be working. Whoever has hired you is expecting an honest day's work out of you. So he's giving them gentle musar, gentle chastisement. And this, says Rabbi Yaakov, is the key to understanding the phrase achai. Rabbi Yaakov talks about the obligation of giving tochacha, of chastising, of giving rebuke. It's an affirmative biblical command. Torah says, Hocheach tochiach samisecha v'lo sisa lav chet. You shall surely rebuke your fellow and don't carry sin. So one understanding of that is that if you see somebody doing something wrong and you have an opportunity to correct them and you don't, then whatever impropriety he performs is also attributed to you because you could have stopped him. Now the Gemara, in discussing hochacha, the obligation to give rebuke, has many criteria. Among them is that if you assess that your rebuke is not going to do any good, it's not going to have any impact, then it's kashem shemitzvah lomar davar nishma, kach mitzvah shelo lomar davar she'eno nishma. Just like it's a mitzvah to say something that somebody will pay heed to, it's a mitzvah to stay silent if somebody's not going to listen to you. There are also other observations of Chazal, such as mutav shiu shogim v'ayum yizidim. Sometimes it's better if you strongly suspect that a person's not going to listen to you. It's better that they do what they do inadvertently rather than defiantly. There's another obligation, though. It's that there below sisa lav chet is, and you will not bear because of him on his account sin, means that there's a limit to hochacha. You can get somebody agitated. That's okay. But not to the point that they become embarrassed, that you're malbim pnei chavero, that literally cause his face to be white or cause him to become shamefaced. That is prohibited. So v'lo sisa lav chet in that case is a limitation on the obligation of hochacha, of rebuke. And Rabbi Yaakov points out that a person is required to rebuke only out of love, not out of resentment, certainly not out of hate, not out of a sense of superiority or a desire to assert one's authority, but rather out of a sense of doing good for the person to whom you are directing your rebuke. Rabbi Yaakov says that the usage of the word achai or achi, my brothers, is specifically to create a background not of antagonism, but of fondness, of, one might even say, love, to create an atmosphere of a positive relationship, a loving relationship, even if it's with a stranger, but to characterize the person as someone with whom you feel close. It may not be a biological brother, but it's somebody with whom you feel close, and as a result, you are raising an area, an issue that can be improved upon. Reb Noach Weinberg used to comment on the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Perek Vav Mishnah Vav, which lists the Memches Dvarim Shator Niknes Bahem, what Reb Noach used to call the 48 ways to wisdom. And one of them is Ohev es hatochachos, that somebody loves being reproved. Now, it's much easier to love reproof when it's said in a loving way from somebody who loves you and from somebody who you know they're saying it for your benefit and not for other motivations. And this, Rabbi Yaakov says, is a fundamental element of the mitzvah of hochacha, of reproving somebody else, which is, it must be said out of a sense of helping out the other person and not out of, I gotcha. This can be a challenge. And sometimes it's better if you suspect that the response you'll get is negative and might even cause a deterioration in the relationship. It's better not to say anything. And if you don't know whether you can get away with it or not, then it's quite possible that shev al taisa adif, it's better to sit and do nothing rather than to risk crossing the line with someone, even though you don't intend to, crossing the line and offending them by giving them reproof. And this is all reflected in the words, Achai, my brothers. Have a good Shabbos.